So good afternoon to all of you and a warm welcome to the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub Pavilion. I'm very pleased to host this coming session, Billions for Trillions. Very important topic if we want to achieve the green transition. My name is Massamba Choi. I'm leading the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub, initiative of the Secretariat, launched at COP26. So we have now 2 years. And we have a one-fold vision, mobilize innovation to serve the many people and the planet. A two-fold mission, contribute in accelerating and upscaling existing solution. And the other component of the mission is to accelerate the development of the missing solution. We work on the existing for their upscale deployment, and then on the missing for their development using new science or applied science. We have a threefold core value that are built around three key concepts: caring, sharing, and daring. You have heard me several times saying that, and I will continue to say that because I think it's something that we would like really to promote. Caring, because for us, if we want to have innovation serving the many people and the planet, we have to care for their needs and also for their well-being. Sharing, because we cannot achieve the green transition without radical collaboration. We have to share knowledge. And this is why the Global Innovation Hub is strongly supporting open source. And we have to share experience. And we have to have a mindset of solution provider. It's not just about solving my problem as a country or as a city or as a corporate, but this is more about how can I develop solution that others can use. I think this mindset is very important. I was discussing with one of our panelists just before this session, and we were discussing some of the solutions that the Global South could learn from what is happening here in Dubai. So this is about sharing. Now on the daring part, it's very important because this is what enables innovation. Most of the time when we are setting our goal and objective related to sustainability or climate, we tend to focus on our perception of what is possible. And it is understandable because if you are in a boardroom and you are sharing with the shareholder your plan, you set goal and objective, the first question that I will ask you is, how will you achieve your goal and your objective? And if you say, I do not know, they will not take you seriously. They will say, you are not credible. Your plan is not credible. And this is why people tend to set goal and target on the basis of what is already possible. But this is not a good way forward for innovation. We need to set the goal and the target on the basis of what is needed, having in mind that the gap between what is needed and what is currently possible is actually the key driver for innovation. So we need to know that policies are very important. They are part of the toolbox, but policies alone will not achieve the transition. We need innovation, we need finance. Otherwise, it will not be possible. As we are all the time saying, we did not shift from horse to car by taxing the horse. There was a need to innovate and then come up with the idea of car and mobilize resources for the upscale deployment of production of car. But it's not by taxing the horse that we make the shift. The same, if you want to shift to a green transition, it will not be just about taxing. We need to be innovative and come up with alternative solutions and we need to finance this innovation for their upscale deployment. Now, the point is both innovation and finance, it's about the private sector. And now it's clear for everybody that the public sector can take care of the billion. But if you want to mobilize the trillion, we need the private sector. And it's why the theme of your session, billion to serve the mobilization of the trillion, is a very important one. So with this, I will hand over to the facilitator, Eva, and looking forward to your discussions.
Thank you so much. If I may ask our panelists to come up here, and can we make sure that we have Xiao Chen? Thank you very much. Xiao Chen? Wherever.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good, good, good. All right. Perfect. We can have a seat. I'm going to come to the, oh, I'm going to block Xiao Chen. Maybe I'm going to come to this end. Okay, all right, sounds good. Okay, well, welcome everybody. It's the end of the day. Sounds like we'll have a cozy group and conversation. So let's just jump in. Actually, this is a sort of co-chaired session, and this is really Xiao Chen's vision. And I would like to ask him, he's unfortunately not able to be with us today, so I'm going to ask him to do some introductory remarks. It's all yours, Xiao Chen. Speak loud, because from the next room there is a lot of like noise coming, so you have to kind of overpower them, okay?
Okay, so thank you, Eva. Thank you, Masamba, and also thank you, the UNCCC UGIH team. And it has been an honor to working with the team, in the past a few years on the UGIH initiative. And it's very clear, as Masamba mentioned, that we are in the really a new stage in the climate change, and where we are looking for more ambitious innovations which can just drive bigger changes. And just go back a little bit to the whole climate change, especially from the mitigation side. And if we just go back to the history, and starting from the first climate change protocol, that is the Kyoto Protocol. Under Kyoto Protocol, there was CDM project, and from the project-based approach to the programmatic approach, then to the sector approach, all the climate mitigation, we really just have taken a long way to come from where we were to where we are. But even the sector-based approach, although it can just it's already just addressed many of the challenges faced by the project-based approach, but it's still not enough. And Masamba mentioned the reason why, and it's very clear that we need to align the climate change with other core human needs, and that is really the essential part of the future of climate mitigation or climate change innovation. And where that's we can not only just mitigate climate risk, and also enhance the climate adaptability capability, and but also to address the core human needs, like shelter, like nutrition, like clothing, like many of those core human needs under the UN SDG, where that's the universal access to those services in the next 20, 30 years. The mitigation potential of that will be tremendous. And from the investment side, and each of to address each of those human needs, no matter we talk about mobility or shelter or nutrition, to address the universal access to each of those core human needs means $1 trillion of opportunities for the private sector. So if we can combine the innovations which can address core human need, and then to just bring that universal access to humanity, to individuals, together with addressing the core, the climate change challenge, we are going to really just experience a very different climate mitigation scenario. And then for that, we definitely need to just bring new and additional finance into that. Interestingly, that there are already existing climate related need-based climate innovation available, and many of them have been just piloted in different parts of the world for a long time. But it's very difficult for many of those innovations to reach to scale, and a lot of time it's because commercially those solutions are not viable, and meaning that if you try to just achieve the project goal, you have to just also provide sufficient information to the investors, to the stakeholders regarding, for example, the mitigation potential, mitigation results, and also the access related result. To do that, and then we need to just create a robust monetary evaluation or MRE system, and many times that's to introducing those system incurs a lot of cost to the project. And I remember still at the CDM time where that's within one CDM project, from the project origination to the project certification, and for 1 ton of CO2, and if we say that is $8 or $10 at that time, and around over 50% in many of the projects goes to the non-project owner related cost. And if we leverage emerging technologies, and then we can really just reducing the project cost and make sure the investment go to those mitigation specific activities. So that's the emerging technology. We're talking about blockchain, we're talking about AI, we're talking about metaverse, we're talking about many of the emerging technology we can having that, which can just help us to reducing cost, to reduce cost for, need-based climate innovation. And I think if we can just really bring the power of emerging technology together with the need-based climate innovation, and then we are looking at a very different scenario where that humanities can really meet the human development goal together with the climate change goal. With that, we hope that the Billings for Treating Alliance, Climate Alliance, which can help to identify what are those kind of synergies, where are those innovations, and where are those patient investment, patient money, and to bring them together, and we'll see that climate can really channel the right capital into shelter, into mobility, into clothing, and that's we can again achieving the climate goal together with the SDG goal. And with that, hopefully that's by COP 2030 we're able to identify over $1 billion of those investment or patient money, and then using those patient investments to invest in core need-based climate innovation, and using that we can just unlock $1 trillion of climate potential. With that, hopefully this is the starting point of the conversation. We are able to just report back by COP 29 and also COP 30 and see where we can what we can achieve and where do we stand. So again, thank you very much for everyone to be here, and we're looking forward to working with everyone on this impactful initiative under UN UGIH. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Xiao Chen, for your introduction and opening remarks. And as you all heard, basically our aspiration is big, and we hope to meet the basic needs of billions of people in a climate smart fashion, and that will require tremendous resources. So we want to figure out an effective way of raising those funds. And a lot of those funds are in the private sector, and it's private capital, like the previous panel perfectly highlighted. Something that puzzled me a little bit that I heard on the previous panel, one of the things that was mentioned for blended finance, they mentioned a 1-to-2 ratio, basically 3x on blended finance. And I think we have room to be much, much more ambitious than that. We did 100x 20 years ago. And now with the help of emerging technologies, I think we should be thinking about blended finance on 1,000x, 10,000, a million X basis, but I think at least 1,000x. So I think we need to set these very ambitious goals. And that's all part of the scope of this alliance, which I'm personally very excited about. We have some amazing panelists today. Rather than me reading bios, what I would love to do, we lost Xiao Chen and Melis somehow. Is it possible to get them back on the screen? Thank you. We have 4 amazing panelists, and what I would like to do is first ask them to introduce themselves and speak to how their work is able to contribute to these ambitious goals that we are talking about today, and some of their ideas, just by way of introduction, related to the potential here that we can accomplish leveraging emerging technologies. Melis is unfortunately not able to be with us in the room, Melis Carraro. So if I may, I would like to ask you to go first and just say a few words about yourself and your work as it relates to the Alliance.
Sure. Thank you, Eva. I hope you can all hear me okay in the room there. It's really a shame I couldn't be with everybody physically, but unfortunately I was very ill last week, just recovering. So I'm Melis Carraro. I'm the managing partner at the Catalyst Fund. And Catalyst is a pre-seed venture fund and accelerator focused on backing tech startups that are building a climate resilient future in Africa. So what this means is that we invest in very early stage companies that are building climate adaptation solutions that reduce the vulnerability of communities to climate impacts. And we invest across 3 verticals. The first is fintech for climate resilience. So think about insurance for assets, for crops, it could be anything really that you need to protect yourself against climate risks. It could be carbon finance marketplaces, emergency payment solutions, and also climate data infrastructure, which is essential for financial services. The second pillar we look at is sustainable livelihoods. So we invest in agriculture, ag tech, aquaculture, and fishery management, as well as land restoration. And the third pillar we invest in is essential services. And that is essential services that will be so necessary in a warmer climate, such as access to water and water management, cold chain solutions, sustainable energy as well, healthcare, because it's such a primary need that will be affected by climate change impacts. And the way that we invest in companies is also fairly unique. We combine capital with what we call very hands-on and bespoke venture building support, because at the early stage, the climate tech, and more specifically the climate adaptation asset class, is still very nascent. And so the early stage entrepreneurs tend to need both capital but very hands-on support as well. So our team of operators covers all functions from fundraising, marketing, product, tech, data, and marketing, fundraising, anything that we deem important at the early stage. And we embed ourselves into the startup teams to make sure they scale their products to a point that other investors will want to come in and that can reach commercial scale. So for us, the work of the Alliance is extremely important, and we feel very aligned both in nurturing and growing technology-enabled solutions that can achieve climate impacts, as well as growing resilience and development for communities in Africa. And then thirdly, trying to unlock and mobilize much more capital to this space, because it's certain that we need a lot more of it. We need it fast, and we need it to be channeled to the entrepreneurs and the communities at the front lines of climate impacts.
Thank you very much, Melis. Syed, may I ask you to go next?
Great. Good afternoon or good evening, I shall say. My name is Saeed Al-Bahri. I'm the head for the Center of Future Studies at the University of Dubai. We work on future foresight, and we do futures studies. We've published in the last 3 years. The center was established towards end of 2019, beginning of 2020. We did a couple of studies and we published reports, one of which was about water and food security 2050, how we see water and food security in 2050, based on, of course, the UAE strategy for food security 2050. Some of the signals, when we look into foresight, for example, we look into signals of change and how signals of change can impact climate change. And I give you an example here of water generation from the atmosphere. This was one of the signals that we looked into about 3 years ago. Now, this innovation is already there, and it's deployed in some areas, for example, in some villages in Kenya. If you can get water from the atmosphere through condensation, through other proper mechanisms, and you need to scale that innovation so it can be deployed across many villages and many areas in the world where there is a lack of water and and a lack of drinkable water. This is what I really called need-based innovation. So when we do this foresight, we look into also the sustainability. We have another event happening tomorrow, actually, with the University of Cambridge. That is about how schools and education can become sustainable. We at the University of Dubai implemented a net zero campus. Already this net zero campus have brought its return on investments since 5 years when this project started to be implemented. And now we contribute electricity to the grid, but also the water, 30% of the water is regenerated through recycling. Another thing which I do is to advise government on digital transformation and innovation. UAE in 2021 announced Dubai the first paperless government in the world, saving around more than 130,000 trees, 1 billion paper per year. 130,000 trees was saved from transforming or from going into digital into a paperless environment. So the type of work that we do is about future foresight. We now also bring this to the students in the schools. We teach them in foresight and how to have this future thinking mindset to think about sustainability and to think about the future in a more sustainable way.
Thank you so much, Syed. And I would love to come back to that. You mentioned education, and especially I know that you teach quite a bit of systems thinking in the way you train students for the future.
Yes.
And I would love to circle back to that later.
Sure.
Hania, would you please say a few words about yourself and the work that you're doing in this space?
Sure. Thank you so much, Eva. So hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Hania Othman. I'm the Director of Sustainable Impact at the HBAR Foundation. The HBAR Foundation is the grant giving arm for the Hedera economy, Hedera being a layer 1 blockchain, or if you will, hashgraph technology. Hedera is supported by a governing council, which is a bit different. We have a maximum of 39 governing council members, and of them we have currently 31, where you can think of the Fortune 500s of this world, EDFs, the Googles, IBMs, and so on. We work closely with them together in order to mobilize the funding into our ecosystem to grow the Hedera economy, and hyper-focused on sustainable impact as well. So the Sustainable Impact Fund is one of the 4 funds, and it's focused on bringing the balance sheet of the planet to the public ledger. What does that mean? It means that we're looking to deploy funding in order to create a more auditable form of how we deploy capital within the sustainability markets. We do that with focusing on 5 key goals. The first goal being also the goal which we're currently discussing on making climate finance auditable. A very important goal in order to distribute funding and understand how and what the impact of that funding exactly is. And we believe that we can do that once we understand the rule sets that follow this type of climate financing. So our second goal, which is directly linked towards that, is digitizing and open sourcing methodologies. So once we open source and digitize methodologies and we can understand the rule sets and the data that actually backs that up, we can also start comparing those and understanding on how we can improve the way that we allocate funding. The third goal being the scaling of validation and verification, specifically regarding the carbon markets, biodiversity, any kind of nature markets, and so on, by not having a monopoly on certain kind of areas or biases from certain kind of areas, expanding the capacity and the reach in the areas where we're actually developing those projects. The fourth goal is by understanding all of these different data sets and having the data that is available, we can start also understanding the pricing mechanisms that involve these types of assets. So that comes by enabling a global carbon price or a global environmental asset price, linking that to making ESG reporting credible. So these are the 5 key goals and how we're investing. In terms of the way that we fund or provide our grants is we have focused on an ecosystem approach. We have a $100 million fund, and that $100 million fund, in order to get the biggest reach that we can, we said instead of focusing on singular solutions that might be great on its own, we want to focus on having an ecosystem of solutions that operate well together. So with that, we said we focus on solutions that provide sustainability finance tooling, market supply, enabling reporting and trading functionalities. All in all, tying that together, which means that we're enabling a system of digital public goods. And today, what I would like to speak more about on how financing and digital public goods actually can help reaching that type of financing that's necessary and the capacity and impact that is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanya. Damu?
Sure. Hi, my name is Damu Winston. I am a part of an organization called the Jobs of the Future, where we're largely focused on 3 core pillars. It's about literacy, advocacy, and access. So at the end of the day, we have one of the largest platforms today about bringing thought leaders together on not only providing the education, because literacy is where it all begins. Emerging technology, why it's becoming so powerful now is because people are familiar with it. So literacy, my mother used to always say exposure yields growth. The more you're exposed to, the more you can grow and think about new capabilities that never existed before. The second thing is advocacy. Advocacy is such an important piece because one of the biggest challenges that we all face today is you need support. Think about it like this. One time, you can show up in any situation, and they always used to say back in the day, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. But in reality, it's not even about who you know, it's about who endorses you. And who endorses you gets you into the room, into the conversation. And then from there, it's about what you know that keeps you in the room and allows you to grow and foster and show what you're capable of delivering. So the Jobs of the Future is about creating that environment, that platform, so that you can get that advocacy and open doors, which leads to access to capital, access to resources, access to the cloud compute. We work with some of the largest brands in the world today. You name them, we work with them. And it's about giving you access to those people who can help you through productionizing your solution. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. I would love to, I have a couple of questions that I would love to cover, but in the interest of time, what I would suggest is just I'll put a question out there, and whoever wants to answer, let's just have a conversation about it. So first, I would love to see if anybody has any existing innovations in mind that has been proven effective, but has not been commercialized, but one that would have potential for transformational impact to meet basic needs at a large scale. So I'm just going to put it out there, whoever wants to go first.
If I start first, I mean, we've done an experiment in 2020 here in the desert in Sharjah, just about a couple of 20 kilometers from Dubai. And this experiment, again, was about growing rice in the desert in the UAE. In a 1 kilometer square area, we grew rice about for 763 kilogram of rice was grown into this area just to test if we can grow rice in the desert in the UAE. Now, this rice was modified with a project between the UAE University and between the South Korean Rural Development Board. It was genetically modified to withstand heat, and the saline, the salty environment in the UAE, and of course in the desert. And imagine if this experiment, I mean, it has to be again tested to make sure that the rice is according to the standard that we can produce and cover. And then, if we can scale up an innovation like this globally, imagine, that from the food security perspective, that many areas in Africa and around the world that can benefit from this innovation. We're looking now into how, I mean, we used dripping water to nurture the rice, but we're looking into use of technologies such as AI, for example, how we can, optimize the operational performance of the growth and also minimize the growing cycle. I think the cycle is now about 180 days, about 5 to 6 months. So this POC, it proves to be, it can be scalable, it can be implemented on a larger scale, and funding, the 1 billion for trillion initiative, which can fund POCs like this and implement this across the globe. I think we will see a true benefit for millions of people who are in hunger right now.
That is a very inspiring example, and especially rice, what you're saying, with drip irrigation, which is famously a water-intensive crop.
Right.
So I think it's beyond the scope of this panel right now, but I'm sure Xiaochan has some vision for how do we collect these ideas, and I know some people who are also working on rice, but in a very different context, we could be connecting some dots. But it looks like Damu also has some example that
Yes, so one of the initiatives is around within the real estate space. And so we recognize that about 90% all the real estate and that legacy material represents about 8% of the carbon emissions that in the world today. And we look at when you look at the materials that are used for manufacturing, like steel and cement, that represents another about 15% or so of greenhouse emissions. And so when you add them all up together, from the legacy buildings and the manufacturing still happening, it's close to about 21 to 22% of the total greenhouse effects. So I'm working with an organization today where we're looking to extract from legacy buildings the carbon and then tokenize it so that we put it on a secondary market to do new things with it, so creating financial innovation around that. So I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's still early, and I'm really excited about what's possible from it.
I love that example, especially with so much unmet need when it comes to housing. Hanya, any examples?
We also have a great example within our ecosystem. It's actually also regarding the built environment. So one of the organizations that we're supporting is called Myco Hub, based also focused on Africa, and is specifically meeting the needs for infrastructure developments regarding the built environment over there. Obviously, we're focusing within Africa on two key goals. First of all, it's growth, and on the other side is also decarbonization within that growth. Myco Hub has an interesting solution where they have been able to use fungi as to building bricks in order to enable a built environment where you have, and on the one side, the growth, and you would enable housing, and quite affordable housing as well at that side. And on the other side, also providing decarbonization within that. And how the way that we work together with MycoHub, one of the solutions is they work closely together with Evercity, which is another partner within our ecosystem. And Evercity being a green financing digital platform. So they provide part of the financing actually that's tied into MycoHub in order to enable them to build the solution and then fully trace end to end on how they're actually making that impact, relating it back to the carbon credits, finance through the carbon forward mechanisms and so on. All of this, this complexity in order to say is that there are solutions that tie in with different solutions that are currently being built but haven't yet reached that scale that we would want them to reach. But they are there and they are growing.
Thank you so much for that example, and I'm also glad that you brought up kind of a mycelium fungi-based example, because that's a whole genre of great potential that I think we should be having a separate panel on. So I want to make sure we don't forget about Melis. Melis, do you have any example on this one that you would like to share, or would you prefer to get us started with the next question or answering the next one?
Up to you. I have many examples from our portfolio that are relevant. I'll just maybe share one that I think is important for this audience. It's a company in Morocco called Santa Green, and it's an incredible young startup that is turning deserts into arable land to ensure sustainable food production in the southern of Morocco. And they're doing that by combining ancestral agroforestry techniques or regenerative agricultural practices, powered with modular solar-powered desalination machines and drip irrigation systems that can go directly into the plantation and better use water from brackish sources to irrigate the farms. And so they're hoping to create these climate-resilient regenerative farms, establishing profitable and scalable modular plantations. And on top of that, they developed a modeling software that can allow farmers to better model how much water they need, soil health, etc., via a software program, and aside of that, also use the software to train the local farmers to embrace this technology and agroecological techniques. And from a business model perspective, not only they'll be able to generate 1.5 times more yield through these solutions compared to, say, monoculture, but they're also going to be able to sell carbon credits on the avoidance of desertification, which is a new category of credits, as well as actually monetize this plantation via a sort of asset management platform, so that retail investors can invest directly into their plantation in exchange for credit. So much like the other panelists were saying, it's always a combination. That's what's fascinating. Hard tech, software technology, ways to monetize it in different ways, including carbon credits, which is definitely a growing option for entrepreneurs on the ground.
Thank you so much, Melis. My next question is going to be on finance. What kind of new financial products and instruments do you all believe that we need to develop? And how can emerging technologies facilitate that process?
You want to start?
Go ahead, Hanya.
Yeah. So instead of answering that question directly, often we're thinking always about creating new things and developing new solutions, new financing mechanisms, which are highly necessary. But often we overlook what is already there, and we overlook also how we can reuse the ecosystems and the systems that are there in order to better organize ourselves. And I think a part of the solution is better organization and better alignment in terms of what we want to reach. And I can give an example on the way that we looked at the ecosystem and how we were looking at deploying our financing. A part of thinking in an ecosystem way is, first of all, what is the goal that we want to reach eventually? And what we set as our goal is bringing the balance sheet of the planet to the public ledger. And in order to reach that goal, we said we wanted to create an ecosystem of players that can create win-win solutions for each other, but are connected to each other. What we have seen within the field often, specifically regarding sustainable impact, I can give you an example. There were dozens of startups that were coming up and popping up building MRV solutions, all of them loose from each other and all of them trying to instill exactly the same piece of technology and looking for financing from different investors piece by piece, right? This is a key point, this is a key technology, so it should be a digital public good. And by investing and reusing actually these kind of digital public goods, we can bring our financing a lot further and try to focus on the next pieces of the puzzle that are necessary in order to develop. So for example, one of the things that we have heavily invested in is called The Guardian. So The Guardian being an open source digital measurement reporting and verification solution. And it centers as the key part of our ecosystem, acting like the trust chain in order to create quality assets, in order to focus on not having stranded assets that were going through the network, but also to connect all of the ecosystem members to the facilities that we have before getting into the DMRV, meaning the sustainable finance facilities, giving them access to financing, carbon forwards, carbon-linked bonds, or these kind of mechanisms, but also afterwards linking them towards the demand side. So with that, they don't find themselves alone having an MRV system, and then once they have digitized the process, having to run to find the buyers and having to run to find the project developers, but linking them to an ecosystem. So to answer your question directly, I think one of the things that we can focus a lot more on is how can we bring together all of these different players and all of these different solutions in a more ecosystem format in order to deploy financing much, much further.
If I also, I don't know if you can hear me, but there is a problem with the microphone. Problem with the microphone here. Great. Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, Hania mentioned, you know, a very important point that, I mean, we have a technology right now, blockchain, that's been there almost for what, since 2016, I think, Damu, almost, you know, about 10 years, becoming really mature. How we can leverage this technology with the ecosystem partners, that we can scale up these innovations and make sure that the investment that we put into sustainable impact investment funds that we come up with can be verified, can be audited. We can make it secure. Another financing probably instruments is crowdfunding, and crowdfunding here, especially when we speak about, you know, need-based innovation, especially for those who are vulnerable and for those who are poor, who can contribute probably, so if they can get, for example, necessary things, sanitization, electricity, water. Microfinancing and crowdfunding is another mechanism. We heard people talking about blended finance before and so forth, but there are many, I think, instruments that we can capitalize. But like Hania said, I mean, we need to build the ecosystem, and we need to make sure that, you know, we have the stakeholders engaged into this ecosystem.
So first of all, I want to commend both of my panelists on what they highlighted, which I think is incredible, absolutely. I want to make, I guess, a small prediction, if you guys don't mind, right? So I wrote down some notes. That's why I have my book with me. I normally don't have a book with me. But I truly believe we're going to start to see a ton of new financial products that haven't really existed before because of blockchain, because of ledger technology. And, you know, I think ultimately we'll see a lot of, just like in the traditional market, how we have derivatives and futures, we're going to see a ton of new financial products that are similar, that are just aligned to natural disaster. So I wrote down like climate impact tokens. And then I started doing some research, and I saw that even, I think it's in Kenya right now, they did a crowdsourcing campaign for tokenizing, so tokens for implementing solar power panels, right? And I thought that was pretty, you know, incredible. AI-powered climate risk insurance, sustainable supply chain finance, convertible green bonds, climate-linked microfinance, climate-linked CBDCs, which I can see that happening in UAE, right? Climate tech accelerators, which we're seeing more of that. Impact token funds. This one may be interested to the Catalyst Fund, which is around decentralized VC networks, or let's say DAO networks, right? I think that's going to become really, really interesting. But what I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to see is, you know, traditionally these are considered securities. And so the way that I think they're going to get around it is looking at it from what I wrote down as fractional beneficial interest. So acting as a utility token. And I just want to call it out.
I'm going to write all of this down, or I guess we'll have a recording, because Damu is scaringly correct in his predictions. I'm just in the middle of reading his book, and what he has written down, he wrote down in 2018, seem to have very much come true. So I think we need to keep an eye on these predictions. So Melis, anything to add to this list of financial innovations, or basically the areas where we can leverage emerging technologies to do finance better?
Yeah, to completely agree with everything the other panelists have said. I will just say two things. One is that I think we're still need, in order to finance innovation in this space, a lot more of risk-taking capital. And unfortunately, there is actually capital out there ready to be deployed, but the speed at which it reaches certain innovations is still too slow, dramatically slow, in fact, because of bureaucracy and complex systems that doesn't allow it to flow as fast as it should, but also because of the inability of investors, and especially large institutions, to take more risk. And there's no time to waste, so that risk has to be taken. And I think blended finance is certainly one tool in that toolbox. There could be a lot more, where we think both about de-risking the investors, but also de-risking the entrepreneurs. So ways to price, for example, the support, for example, offered by ecosystem actors. For this, I think DAOs have a big potential. With blockchains, how do we reward everybody who's contributing to making these innovations flourish and scale? And then the second area that I think is really interesting actually is carbon markets. I mean, there's obviously, I know, a lot of things to fix and adjust and improve when it comes to carbon markets, transparency, accountability, and so on. But I do think that if we do it right, that does hold the potential to fuel innovation on the ground and then make sure that the benefits reach communities. And within that, both AI and blockchain have a large an important role to play on the verification side and then distribution side of the capital, and obviously the transparency of it all in ledger technology, for example. So we're really we're really scratching the surface on those innovations, and I do think a lot of de-risking capital needs to go into both of the formation of new financial instruments and as well as directly, obviously, to the innovators.
Can I add?
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
So I think I wanted to add one more thing, because obviously we've discussed about you mentioned all of the different innovative tools and financial mechanisms that exist. And as the HBAR Foundation and Hedera, we do fund all of these, and they are on a network. I think I wanted to highlight also one of the projects that we're working with and a trip that we've recently done. And so we have announced when we were in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, there was the AITA conference, and we announced a partnership with Alcott.io. Alcott.io being the digital arm for Alcott AG. They're bringing about 500 million metric tons of carbon to the network, completely digitized. And the reason, the backstory behind this is that we're saying we're going to open the books on climate finance. And Alcott being the first actual project developer to fully be transparent on the way that the distribution is done actually between their projects. So one of the interesting parts and why I'm saying this is we went to Senegal and we visited Ziguinchor, and within Ziguinchor we went to Kafountine, being a village, and we went to a fish smokery area where you had a vast amount of old actually stoves, cooking stoves. They were made of stones, they were wood fired, and we went there because Alcott is going to do a project over there, and they're going to shift from the old wood fired cooking stoves to electronic cooking stoves, and that's going to improve that area over there. So it was interesting when we first arrived there. Obviously, it's shocking from my point of view to see the conditions, but it's a thriving economy. So it's an economy that is thriving within that area. These people have livelihoods, they have jobs, there is an actual, and from my point of view, I couldn't understand it until I talked with someone locally over there. And carbon finance specifically when we're talking about carbon linked bonds and so on, can bring a certain type of innovation that is necessary or financing to that area, and which is the most that we can do within that is just replacing the cooking stoves. But considering that these are working people and they need an infrastructure, so how do we get the financing there in order to not just improve and to transform the cooking stoves, but also the housing facilities, the entire infrastructure, schooling facilities? You cannot just do that within carbon. So we need mechanisms that link the different sustainable development goals in and have the methodologies that are clear for that, together with the carbon financing that we're currently doing. And having that on chain allows for that to for the not just the funding, but also for the capacity build to go back to these kind of communities. Thank you.
So I would love to follow up on that because both you and Saed made this point in your remarks that there is an opportunity to leverage emerging technologies for traceability to make sure that the impact is actually accomplished that is being claimed. And that's really important, especially when it gets to the point of last mile and basic needs. So let's do another round on that if we could, because I think that's a really important subject.
I guess I'll start real quick.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
you know,
Go ahead.
we know from the
Do
data.
you want this? Because
Can we? I
it
think.
works?
Hello.
Is it working now?
I got it. Yeah. So we know from the data that just in the U.S. about 35% of millennials already own digital assets. And we look at a Morgan Stanley study came out and said about 95% of millennials also say that they want to buy sustainable goods and services. So when you combine the two, I think it's inevitable that we're going to see more digital assets that are going to be used for either funding new projects or paid to people in the form of a digital asset, just because that generation are the ones that are going to be using it. You also look at platforms, I hate to say the name, but like Roblox as an example. Think of that, the Gen Alpha, I think that age group between 7 and 14, 74% of them are on this platform almost on a daily basis in the US alone. So what we're saying is this is a demographic that's growing up that's digital natives. So most of us in the room here or online are digital adopters. These digital natives are used to having digital collectibles, digital assets. So it's inevitable that we're going to see more of these financial innovations where they can transact in these virtual worlds.
So just to follow up on what Dan was saying, I mean, you have really a very good example here with, for example, tokenizing supply chain. And I remember in 2019, we visited Maersk in Sweden, and there's this platform which was developed with IBM called TradeLens, which tokenize the entire supply chain, so you can really have the visibility, traceability, which Hannah was talking about, and this will give at least trust and assurance to the investors if we can, verify and audit the assets. Tokenizing and digitizing asset, and this is one intrinsic feature of a blockchain which can be leveraged into impact investment such as this. Of course, AI, Damo has mentioned also, using AI for risk analysis and especially for insurance, which can provide really a risk assessment in terms, which investment option and which innovation should be invested in and so forth. So we see that emerging technologies and digital twin is another example where we can, simulate the asset, before building the asset, just to understand how impactful is this can be on a community or on a larger scale.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just want to say, so one of the technologies I'm heavily involved in right now is simulation tech. So just building on the digital twins. We're using it for a number of use cases, from looking at open innovation platforms where you can simulate if you introduce a new digital asset or an asset to a particular environment using historical data and synthetic data to model what that asset could do in this new environment. That's one. Also looking at digital twins from a physical perspective. I understand. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Say one more
But
thing.
we started late. We actually started late.
Wrap up.
15 minutes
Yeah?
late, but it's okay.
Can I say
Just
one thing? Or like,
last thoughts from everybody, and then
Yeah. So I think Hi. So I think the last thought is we've mentioned, obviously, and fellow panelists have mentioned great innovations and great technologies that are extremely important. And I think in order to enable those types of great innovations, we need to think about the first and last mile data. Obviously, we all know the concept garbage in, garbage out, and what that actually means. But specifically when we're talking about having these kind of projects in weak governance countries, where there is no central data collection point, we need to understand and be innovative on the way that data is being collected and data is being verified. So within that, we need to, I think, focus on solutions that also empower local people in order to collect that data and also to benefit from the data that they're collecting. That's my last word. Thank you.
I love these points. Thank you very much to everybody. Melis, any last thoughts from you?
On this subject in particularly, I couldn't agree more with the last comment. And I will say, let's not discount also the power of simple technology and how that can actually be used on the ground by communities directly. For example, we just tested a tool, a chatbot via a WhatsApp bot to capture M&E data on the ground that can then be fed into an AI and used into a much larger database. But on the ground, the way to collect the data is a simple questionnaire over WhatsApp, and everybody has WhatsApp. All the farmers that we work with in Senegal, this is in Senegal. So I think there's also important to recognize the human touch and the tech and touch nexus when we think about leveraging technology for climate impact and ultimately the greater benefit of these communities on the ground.
Thank you. Do we have 2 more minutes? No? Okay, can Xiaochen say goodbye? Okay. Okay, Xiaochen, you have 30 seconds for some final thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think this is the kind of conversation that we need, and where that go back to Melis' points, where that's, we need finance, which is our investor who is just more patient, who take that risk, but they cannot take the risk themselves only, and we need to really, from the policymaker side, to just set the stage, and from the innovator side, that to just develop new financial instruments which can just enable, the risk to be shared amongst the different stakeholders. Then we also need to, go back to Eva's point that, like what UNFCCC UGIH is doing, that bring the right demand at, no matter national level or city level to the, local community level, and then surface those innovation, and then there, and financiers or investors can really take no time to find what are the scalable solutions where that they can just back them up. Go back to Hanya's piece, where it's very important that we shouldn't just invest in the things which already are there, and then all the innovators just wasting time to repeating innovation, and how to just again go back to the mission of UNFCCC UGIH, where that's the surface all those innovations, where we know where innovation already happened, where our innovations already just solving the problem, and the right capital to match the right capital to the right solution to solve the right problem. So that's the goal is, for UGIH, but that's also how the Billions for Trillions Climate Alliance can help to just really making that matching happen and facilitate this conversation. And I hope that by COP29, and we'll be able to report back. Whoever you are as an investor or as innovators, you already see the profile of the potential member of UGI, of the Billions for Trillions Climate Alliance, and whoever you are, you feel that you can add value to this, approach and to scale climate innovation, and feel free to reach out. With that, thank you, Eva. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.